Okay. So this week we are in week 3 and we're talking about research design. And let's just kind of go over what our module looks like this week. So your learning content is going to come out of chapter 2. We're going to be talking again about the purpose of research design. And of course, everything is open and everything is due Friday. If you can't turn it in on Friday, be sure to turn it in as soon as you can. So making sure that we answer our questions, we're reading through the videos, we're posting. Again, we're talking about research design this week and in different experiments. And you're going to be answering the questions that are in chapter 2, and making sure that you're posting them. And then of course you have your teach the class, where you're going to become the expert of those 2 pages of that chapter. Make sure please that you are opening up, or I should say sharing your link, making sure that it's shareable, making sure that I can have access to your Canva, because if you get a 0, it's because I didn't have access to your Google or to your Canva, okay? So if you do receive a 0 for the work that you turned in, but I couldn't access it, just be sure to repost it as a shareable or accessible, okay? All right. So that's pretty much what we're getting into. So let's get into it. So again, like I said on Monday, it's kind of housekeeping. I want you to be really familiar with how you're going to look for your research article / literature review, since you're doing this 2 times this semester. So the first thing you're going to do in your Canvas is you're going to go to RCC Library, and you're going to hit databases, and we can come to academic one file, and we're going to hit psychology. And as you can see, just again, we're just going over all these different topics that you can explore. It doesn't matter what you choose to explore for your topic of choice, anything you want to. I like this thing called love and interpersonal, because that's the stage in life that we're all at, according to Erickson and his 8 stages of development. We're either in isolation or intimacy. Last week we talked about sexting, so let's see what other articles we can get into. Let's see. Grandioso and vulnerable narcissism on interpersonal surplex model, reactions to criticism in romantic relationships. Ooh, now I'm nosy. Let's see what this is about. I know, right? Okay. So it looks like, here's the abstract. Let me turn it up a bit so we can see what we're looking at. Now let's see if I want this study, because it says vulnerable narcissism, EN, and grandioso narcissism are characterized by different expressions of self and interpersonal relationship. Okay, so it starts off by saying this study aims to examine narcissism with its grandioso and vulnerable dimensions, while considering reactions to criticism, which is a challenging interpersonal experience accompanied by interpersonal circumflex model. So they're using a circumflex model by the person and the romantic partner. The study evaluates the dimensions of narcissism and is based on the response of the participants and their partners. So let me see. Already, I can tell you this is not an article I would want. And the reason why I do not want this article is because right off the bat, they've only told me about the objective. They have not identified my sample population. They have barely identified what my method was going to be. They have not identified a conclusion, and they have not identified any results. So for me personally, if I'm going to write a paper on something, I'm not going to pick this one per se, because these things did not just jump out at me and we don't have time to waste. Now, if I was just being nosy-posy like every other day, then I wouldn't mind reading this article. But for the purposes of looking for a research article, this is not going to help us in our function. Okay, so let's find another research article. Let's see. Mixed methods analysis of cultural influences on the attitude of love and hate. Let's see. Now this one, right off the bat, it's good. It's showing signs of success here. Because it's already given me an objective, it's given me my method, it's given me my results, and it's given me my conclusion. So, the objective, the religious influence on the construction of emotions like love and hate have lacked empirical attention. This study sought to address the issue by exploring the influences of culture and religion on love and hate using both quantitative and qualitative measures. So this might be something I want to pick. Because number one, if we're thinking about what the objective is, it flat out tells you that there hasn't been a lot of studies on the influence of religion on love and hate. That's pretty interesting as it pertains to your relationships. You know, I think that's pretty fascinating because I don't know how many conversations we start off with when we're talking with our partner or our potential partner about how they view love and how they view hate. It's more like, hey, how you doing? I'm good. You're good. We're good. Let's hang out. It's never really that deep. So that's why they haven't really found how that works. And we'll get more into that. So they already told us the method. The samples come from Japan of 397. So they got a pretty good sample population going on here. So now I'm interested in what they have to say. I'm kind of invested. They're telling us that from Thailand, they got 258. From the US, they got 198. And from Sweden, they got 80. So this is something I'm even more interested in because of the fact that they have sample populations from a lot of different places. It wasn't just from one spot. So now I'm really curious to learn how does religion impact the way we see love and hate in our interpersonal relationships. So they took an online survey on either love or hate. Quantitative measures were used to assess either positive or negative attitudes towards love and hate, while qualitative measures were used to assess differences in the concepts of love and hate. So here's the thing. When it comes to quantitative is the way the numbers are telling the story. Am I making sense? And then qualitative is how the person is telling the story. So when we're doing quantitative measures, we do a lot of surveys. They're not open-ended questions. Am I making sense? They're very yes or no or on a scale of. That's what quantitative measures. They measure the quantity of something. But when we're talking about qualitative, we're talking about asking open-ended questions. And the reason why I like qualitative over quantitative is because when we're talking about open-ended questions, we can gather themes from each person's response that kind of looks like the next person's response. Am I making sense? And we're getting exactly the information that we need to know versus a numbers game because we're kind of guessing since it's a Likert scale. I don't know, am I making sense on that? So that's why I like qualitative. But this experiment, they're giving us both. So they're going to tell a really big picture because they have people from across the world, number one, and number two, they're using both qualitative and quantitative measures to understand about this love, hate, and religion thing in interpersonal relationships. So they're telling us the results. The quantitative measures revealed that cultures, Japan and Thailand, with stronger Buddhist influences tend to have more moderate views of love and hate, while culture with stronger Christian, which is Sweden and US influences, tend to have more polarized views of love and hate. The qualitative measures revealed that although the universal presence of love and hate shares similar qualities across culture, there are unique elements in both that may be lost when measuring love and hate. So the qualitative is able to capture those things that the quantitative isn't when it comes to how people are thinking and feeling. Okay? And so the conclusion, these findings demonstrate a need to consider the religious influence on emotions, especially when it comes to emotions like love and hate, which have considerable influences over relationships. formation of family, and dissolution of alliances, religion may have a significantly broader influence than currently observed or considered in the empirical literature. So, what are your guys' thoughts about religion and love and hate?
I feel like it makes sense because it goes even like if you each of the religions are woven into the identity and the structure of the cultures in question. Like, you notice how Japan and Thailand have more moderate views of love and hate, and they have Buddhist influence. It goes deeper than that. There's also like Buddhism preaches like a collective culture where the greater good of the community takes priority over the needs of the individual. While it's more polarized in Sweden and the U.S. because Christianity has a more like individualistic aspect to it, where the needs of the individual come first before the greater need of good. So it's polarized in Sweden and the U.S. because we tend to prioritize what we want and need over the greater good. And while in Japan and Thailand, there's more moderate views because they prioritize the greater good of the community or the relationship than their own needs.
And I like what you said about this because of the fact that we are talking eventually, I'm gonna share it in a little bit actually. But what he is saying is pretty factual. Because here in America, we are very much so individualized community. Versus in these other places, they are very collective. So how does that work across the board? So let's go there real quick. And we'll see this again too later on in your semester, but I just wanted to speak to what he was talking about, and that is kind of how that works.
I actually did a whole like speech/essay on this kind of thing in my previous college during public speaking as well.
Okay.
So I maybe could share that at some point.
Let me see. Okay, well let's get to this real quick.
What keeps baby's skin healthy? A diaper that doesn't leave skin wet. That's why Pampers...
Lawrence Kohlberg's theory claims that our development of moral reasoning happens in 6 stages. The stages themselves are structured in 3 levels: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. To understand this better, imagine a conflict at school. There is a fight in the schoolyard. 2 ninth graders are beating up Tom. Those who watch the fight are at different stages of moral development. Let's see what they do and how they justify their behavior. At stage 1, we make moral judgments based on obedience and punishment. Finn's sense of good or bad is directly linked to whether he gets punished or not. Finn sees what is happening to his friend and wants to help, but he doesn't because he is afraid the teacher may punish him if he gets caught fighting. He asks himself, how can I avoid punishment? At stage 2, we are motivated by self-interest. Mary decides to intervene and help Tom. She knows that she might get punished, but she also knows that she could become a victim herself someday. If she helps Tom now, he might help her in the future. She is asking herself, what's in it for me? At stage 3, interpersonal accord and conformity guide our moral judgment. Betty sees the fight and wants to intervene, but when she realizes that all the others are just watching, she decides not to get involved. She wants others to see that she is a good girl who is conforming with the ethics of the community. She asks herself, what do others think of me? At stage 4, we value authority and want to maintain social order. When the teacher sees the group fighting, he immediately steps in and shouts, stop, fighting at school is forbidden. He feels that, above all, it is important to follow the rules, otherwise chaos breaks out. He feels it is his duty to uphold the rules that sustain a functioning society. He asks himself, how can I maintain law and order? At stage 5, we understand rules as a social contract as opposed to a strict order. Jessie, who watches from afar, is not sure how she feels about this. To her, rules make sense only if they serve the right purpose. Obviously, the school rules prohibit fighting, but maybe Tom deserves to finally learn his lesson. Just yesterday, he punched a young girl from grade 1. She asks herself, does a rule truly serve all members of the community? At stage 6, we are guided by universal ethical principles. All those involved now have to face the headmaster. He first explains the school rules and why they exist. He then clarifies that rules are valid only if they are grounded in justice. The commitment to justice carries with it an obligation to disobey unjust rules. The headmaster's highest moral principle is compassion. He believes that all people should learn to understand each other's viewpoints and that they don't feel alone with their feelings. He asks, what are the abstract ethical principles that serve my understandings of justice? At the pre-conventional level, Finn is driven by fear and Mary by self-interest. Both judge what is right or wrong by the direct consequences they expect for themselves and not by social norms. This form of reasoning is common among children. At the conventional level, Betty responds to peer pressure, and the teacher follows the rules. Their morality is centered around what society regards as right. At this level, the fairness of rules is seldom questioned. It is common to think like this during adolescence and adulthood. At the post-conventional level, Jessie knows that things are complicated because individuals may disobey rules inconsistent with their own morality. The headmaster follows a universal ethical idea, at complete disconnect with what society thinks or the rules say. To him, everything is solved through compassion. The right behavior, in his opinion, is therefore never a means to an end, but always an end in itself. Not every person reaches this level. The American psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg based his work on Piaget's theory of cognitive development. In order to confirm his theory of stages of moral development, Kohlberg interviewed boys between the ages of 10 and 16. He analyzed how they would justify their decision when confronted with different hypothetical moral dilemmas. We will now present to you the most famous moral dilemma Kohlberg presented to the students. Let's see what you would do. The Heinz dilemma. A woman was on her deathbed. There was only one drug that the doctors thought might save her. The druggist that made that particular medicine sold it for 10 times the price of the production costs. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, was poor and could not afford to buy the drug, not even with the financial help of his friends. Heinz then asked the pharmacist to sell it to him for half the price, but he refused. To save the life of his wife, Heinz broke into the man's laboratory and stole the medicine. Now tell us, should Heinz have stolen the drug? Would it change anything if Heinz didn't love his wife? What if the person dying was not his wife, but a stranger? Should the police arrest the druggist for murder if the wife had died? Please write your answers and their justifications in the comments below.
So, what are your thoughts, especially as it pertains to our article that we just found? What?
Well, is it in response to the video's questions, or is it based on the, that's my question.
Well, we'll let you go.
Oh, just let me go?
Yeah.
Well, one thing, I think, I don't think necessarily the husband's wrong, because maybe I'm just not really a fan of big corporations, but I feel like if a corporation was preventing me from saving, like, the love of my life, I would also, I think, break in as well. Or at least try to. That's just me. But going along with this, I think that morality and what is considered right and wrong is so important in religion. It's the basis kind of it all. And when it comes to how you view what's appropriate in society, but also within yourself, you also reflect on what you've been taught through religion, or lack of religion. So I think that this is a really interesting topic because it kind of gives very different answers based simply on religion itself. Especially with the concept of sin and what is sin, and how different religions view sin, if they even think there is sin in the first place. So yeah, that's kind of what I have my thoughts on it.
It is, it's a lot. And so when we're doing, I'll give you 1 second. When we're talking about research, how were we able to convey this if we don't have a qualitative perspective? So if there wasn't for open-ended questions, how would we be able to gather themes about what is the difference between what each person thinks is considered love?
Yeah.
What are the things that are considered hate according to your religion or society?
Especially children.
Especially when it comes to being children, yes.
Yeah, especially children. I think children who are under the influence of a said religion are going to have conflicts of what they believe and what they think their parents believe. So they're going to have this thing of, should I follow what they think is correct in terms of what my parents follow and this I would follow, or what do I think?
Right, and especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships, because this stuff plays out in your interpersonal relationships, whether you're paying attention or not. Go ahead.
I think it's an even greater area because it says that it says it's about like how religion factors into how we view love and hate, but then also, as he said, not only can it also differ by what religion you follow, but it can even differ if you follow religion at all. So I think there needs to be like a general a universal common decency. It's oh, this is wrong no matter how you justify it, and this is correct no matter how you justify it. So because it's interpretable how how we feel what is right and what is wrong, and it's gonna differ by everyone, even in the collectivist culture. It could differ amongst different people, what's right, what's wrong, and it's all just a matter of perspective and perception. What is the truth to you, and what is what does the world look like to you? How do you see the world, and how does that match up with how others see the world?
And that's what Kohlberg was talking about. How do you see the world, and how does it match up with the rest of the world? Especially when he was talking about his moral development. Because in the first stages of moral development, it's all about me, I. You know? And when we're talking about love and hate in our religions, and when we're talking about our interpersonal relationships, in that moment, it is about me, I, because this is our relationship, right? But then, when we think about it as a bigger picture, you guys are now, whether it's boyfriend or girlfriend or you're married, you guys are kind of moving as a unit. So what does now this unit look like when we're talking about in the conventional stages of development? Where we're talking about, are we conforming to society? How do we look? When it comes to PDA, some people are very PDA. Some people are don't touch me in public, everybody's looking at us. But why is that? Especially when we're talking about how we're developing morally. Who's the one to tell us we can't have PDA or we can have PDA? Because that's strictly an internal thing from your development, right? And then we talk about the post-conventional, where not all rules fit everybody, right? And what might work for one person is not going to work for the other, because we saw this person needed their lick back. And who were we to interrupt that lick back by trying to be Captain Save 'em? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And then we have this thing that's a bigger thing, which you were just mentioning, the universal principles of compassion. Do we always have to have something black and white? How come we just can't have it to fit for that moment? And how is that going to be, the behavior that we're going to display, how is that going to be so that we can all get along for the greater and the long run? Am I making sense? how this
Yeah.
is put together. So it's pretty interesting, again, as we're taking it a step back into the reason why we conduct experiments, which is the question that I asked you, is because of the fact that no one has all the answers to any of this. But what we want to be able to do is to operate out of compassion. And the way that we operate out of compassion is by gathering as much information as we can to learn about these different capacities, so we have the ability to see where and how we're going to navigate within each one of these groups. Am I making sense? So I kind of find this article, again, something that I might want to explore, because I'm nosy like that when it comes to dealing with people, especially at this stage in life when we're talking about all of our social media. Because, it's just me who happens to be on social media and looking at all these relationship goals, right? Because it's just me who's looking at these relationship goals, and they're like, oh my gosh, they're so cute. They have on matching shoes. They have on matching shirts. Go ahead.
Well, if you think that's funny, wait until you see the actual person for themselves, because hell, they might have a different perception about why they're posting what they post versus why you might be seeing what they're seeing. Get inside their head for 1 minute. What do you think they're thinking of when they post that up? Is the world isn't a one-way street or a two-way street. It's multiple
Highways,
ways.
right? We have
Yeah.
highways in this thing. You're right. And so, again, when we're talking about this thing, social media, and we're talking about our development of our relationships in that conventional stage, that's where we're at. We're all like, relationship goals, oh my gosh, they're so cute.
And we never stop to think about what our relationship role model is actually thinking of or going through on the other side of the screen.
And we don't, because a lot of the times, what are we really posting?
The best of ourselves.
The best of the best. We don't know if behind the scenes this person is getting abused because, again, of what their aspects and what their qualities and what they believe love looks like, depending on, what their background is. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So when we're doing research, it's so much to encapsulate because of the fact that there is no right or wrong answer. There is no one size fits all. Am I making sense so far? Okay. So let's get into this really quick too.
For that matter, it ties back to what I was saying earlier about our warping the truth. Like, what does the truth look like to you? What do you think it looks like to them? How does your perception of reality match up to others' perception of reality?
Right, and that's why the research is so important, because one person's reality might not look the same, but if it's written down, then we each kind of have a black and white idea of what's been presented, and we can kind of navigate from there what we want to pick and choose. Go ahead. Go there.
Do you think Luigi is just a version of this whole thing?
The what?
Do you think the guy Luigi who shot the healthcare CEO is
Uh-huh.
a version of this?
You know what? It could be. We would have to definitely do some more research, but it could be, because if you're over here, for example, my mom, right? I'm gonna just put it out there. My mom has diabetes, okay? And she's looking for this drug called Ozempic. I think that's what it's called. But now, because of social media, and everybody wants to be snatched real quick, too fast, instead of doing the hard work, they want this Insta model body. They're taking Ozempic to lose weight, to control their appetite. So now people like my mom, they can't even get in touch with this drug. And so it's making her deal with her diabetes a little more challenging, because she's having to check out several different doctors just to see if they would prescribe her this drug that she's already had prior to everybody starting to use it for cosmetics. Here she is using it to save her life. Meanwhile, everybody's using it for cosmetics. So now the drug is sky high. And just like, you know, you were saying in the back, how are the family members gonna get this? Insulin's another thing. You know, one day insulin is $5, we make it in our own bodies, but people who are diabetic, they can't produce insulin. So it's $5 now. But now, because America is a capitalist society and they see how many people are being diagnosed with diabetes, let's raise that thing up. So now people are having a harder time getting Ozempic and their insulin. So now as a result, people are upset, they're protesting, they're outraged, right? Go ahead.
It's too easy to warp the narrative around something when, you know, it's become too easy to warp the narrative around something when something happens. It's because one perception of reality can easily spread and because our perceptions are not always going to be compatible with each other. The whole cosmetics thing, how quickly do you think it spread? Like what? It's easy to warp the narrative around something once enough people once enough people are starting to share the same idea, the same warped perception of the truth, the same reality. Once enough people start to believe that, it becomes too easy to warp effectively our whole existence, our whole meaning, principles, everything around this new ideal or facet of reality or foundation of existence.
And you're right, because let me tell you, so my friends, right, them peoples we hangs out with, they're like, oh my gosh, so my doctor prescribed me this new drug, and all you do is shoot your stomach with it, and now you're gonna lose like 20 pounds. And in my mind, I'm like thinking, I wonder what the long-term effect is that going to be.
There you go.
Especially when you're not doing the work. Meanwhile, people like me are in the gym at 5:30 in the morning trying to sweat it out. And I say that because it's like, do I want this drug even though my friends are influencing and they're showing me all their snatch pictures and how fine they are? Oh, they fine too. Can't tell them nothing. Right? Booty's popping. Mine ain't. I gotta sit up here and work at it. But I don't know the long-term effects. And just like you were saying, it's so easy to warp the narrative, especially when we're taking away from other people because we're stuck at the pre-conventional stage. What's in it for me? What's in it for me is I want to be snatched and I want to be on the ground. But you're not taking it to the post-conventional stage, which is how are you being compassionate enough for the people who actually need this and who are on Medi-Cal. People on Medi-Cal can afford $250 a shot, like my friends who can because of cosmetics. So now what are we doing here? Am I making sense? So unless we're doing the work and the research, how will we know this is even going on?
Remember what
You know?
when we were talking about social media about and how I said you need to like slow down for at least a minute and think about it through? This is what I mean, like moderation. Like just even just stop for 1 nanosecond in time, like just 1 little second of your life and just thinking about what's happening around you, what are you doing to yourself, how will this impact others. Even just a little second of that could probably make the biggest differences in the world.
Definitely
Cut down
so.
half of the world's problems.
Hey, but we live in a free country, so I mean, why would I do that? Right? I can look at and eat whatever I want, and I can be as selfish as I want to.
I mean, sure, you feel free to be as free as you want when you're 6 feet underground.
Yeah, that's what it is. People, we're not thinking like that. Just like with this stuff that we're taking, these injections. We don't know what that's gonna do to a healthy body when we're giving these injections to people who don't have healthy bodies, right? So let's switch it up real quick. Let's see what this article is talking about. So this is the cross-cultural variations in romantic and sexual attitudes and experiences among young adults in India and the U.S. So, the current study explored cultural difference in romantic and sexual attitudes and experiences as well as their association with mental health and well-being among young adults in India have the objective. They recruited a sample of 883 unmarried young adults from both countries, so they have the population. The results revealed that American participants endorsed liberal sexual attitudes and reported more involvement in sexual activities. Indian participants showed more pro-romantic attitudes and reported more mental health problems. The cultural effects on sexual and romantic attitudes were stronger for women. Most of the association between romantic and sexual attitudes and experiences differ across cultural groups. Implication for future cross-cultural research on sexual and romantic experiences of young adults are discussed. So, I personally don't know if I would pick this article because off the bat it does not have like clear, objective, clear, it does have a clear sample population, but it does not give me a clear methodology, and it does not give me clear results. However, I am nosy, I'm not gonna lie, because here it is, we're in America, right? And we're at the stage, as Erickson would say, between isolation and intimacy. And during this stage, sex is on a lot of our minds. That's just the way it is during this stage in life, because biologically, it's that time to reproduce. Am I making sense? So we do spend a lot of our time seeking romantic relationships. And it's pretty interesting to see that the results reveal that American participants endorse more liberal sexual attitudes and report more involvement in sexual activities. Bless you. However, what I did not see in this abstract is if you're being involved in all these sexual activities, how does this impact your mental health? And what they're trying to tell us is that for those people in India, right, it said that they had more, they reported more mental health problems and showed more pro-romantic attitudes. So, when they're thinking about being preoccupied, that's basically what they're saying. Being sexually active versus being preoccupied with sexual activities. That means the thought of doing these sexual activities and how to get to sex. Am I making sense so far? And so over here in the US, it's very liberal. You guys saw my favorite commercial 2 weeks ago. Do I need to repeat it?
What's your favorite commercial?
The girl who was eating the Carl's Jr. burger.
I must have missed that.
Oh, I gotta show it again one more time before we leave. So, over here in America, we're very hypersexual, right? And we're very liberal. Versus over here in India, that's not the case. They have a lot of rules and regulations. And it kind of goes back to our last article about, like, you know, your religion. If you're more religious, are you going to be engaged in hypersexual activities versus people who are more, I guess, liberal, that's what the article says, who don't mind being engaged in sexual activities? For me, both, I think it's both bad. Because if we're too hyper-focused, that is going to cause mental health with anything. I don't care what hyper-focus you choose to have, whether it's excessive worry, whether it's, you know, whatever the case may be. But if we're too liberal, like, we got to talk about these physical diseases called STDs. Am I making sense? And a lot of people don't want to talk about STDs. They just want to talk about, let's get down to business. And it's like, well, wait a minute, there's consequences to both of these. Because your mental health is going to be very impacted should you catch a disease. Am I making sense? So I don't know personally if this is an article that I would want to pick just because I didn't see everything that I was looking for. But if I was into learning more about liberal sexual activities versus people who are preoccupied with sexual activities, because I'm a sex therapist and I'm working with sex offenders. So these are something that I might want to be curious to learn about, because how does this pertain to my study of people who choose to participate in offending sexually? Is it because they're too preoccupied and now this is their mental health? Or is it because they're too liberal and now this is their mental health? Am I making sense? Go ahead.
I think it also factors back to the previous article and what I said earlier, like, whatever religion you follow, can dictate your perception of reality and what you believe is right or wrong. So I'm thinking, I have a hunch that most liberal folks won't talk about things such as sex and STDs because it's uncomfortable, or their principles, their perceptions of reality have made it so that they see these things as wrong or uncomfortable and something they can't really get to because who knows, maybe it's wrong in their society, maybe it's wrong in their religion, maybe it's just wrong in their head. But it's something that they defined as wrong or right, and they're pretty damn stubborn to think anything else because this is their perception of reality. This is their truth.
But this is our lives, though, in real life. Like, unless we're being taught and educated, how are we to look at another perspective? Go ahead.
Liberals believe that like you can do what you want as long as you're providing and stuff. Yeah, as long as you don't hurt anybody else. So, but yeah, you get around diseases and all that. We got porn also changing the minds and the perspective of women and stuff. That's how a lot of people are unhappy in relationships. There's not a lot of people getting married, more abortions and stuff. So like you really decline and like workplace and everything, man. Like it's like a lot of flaws.
It is a lot of flaws.
Generational trauma being passed down. One generation's perception of reality being imposed or passed down to the next.
But I don't even know if that's the case anymore. Because just what, kind of what you were sharing, if we're in a society where I'm on the Instagram, right, and I can just show whatever I want to show, what kind of message are we sending? What kind of message are we sharing? Right? So I don't know if it wasn't this class I showed my favorite commercial. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Eating a hamburger.
Yeah.
I feel like this is from the Super Bowl.
I feel like we saw the commercial, but I'm gonna just show it to you again. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing those way back when. Yeah, like early 2010s. Like this is before the Harvey Weinstein incident. Like at least around the early 2000s. Oh yeah, there we go.
There we go.
I was like 5 years old.
Yeah, I was like.
When you saw this 5 years old, we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at that.
It was a
Turn that heat up, y'all. Oh, she's hot. Look at that. It's hot. So hot, she had to take her stockings off, y'all. Look at this.
The Southwest Patty Melt. New at Carl's Jr. and Arby's.
I don't know, that seems like a pretty normal response to me.
That's what I do when you.
That's pretty normal.
It's pretty normal?
What's normal?
It's normal.
So tell me more. Because as we're talking about our research, right, just to totally switch it, why would researchers think that this commercial would be appropriate?
That's me every time I've been in.
Honestly,
Wait, hold on. What did you say?
That's me every time I've been in that, so I don't know. It's normal.
That's you every time you go here?
Yeah, I'm in and out.
Oh, that's how you be feeling, just like her, huh? Like,
Put some chili fries.
it's over, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
Oh, I cannot. Do you do that act in front of the ladies? Because
That's private.
Oh, okay, because this wasn't private.
No, it was not.
So, but what are some other thoughts about this as it pertains to our research and marketing? Go ahead.
well, it does kind of tell you like the attitudes and the perception and I'm going to say this again a lot more in this class, everyone. The narratives and the perception of reality and the truths of the time. that commercial was, I'm thinking from the late 2000s or early 2010s.
My guy said he was 5 years old watching this on TV. What? Go ahead. I don't even remember when the commercial was aired.
That's what I'm saying, like, it's either from the late 2000s.
Like 10, and I saw one of those, I think I was working like 10 or something, seeing that, do you know that weird commercial where it's, that
Is turkey?
What? Is
There's a lot of weird commercials. There was a smoking is gay commercial. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-mm.
You should look that up. It's weird.
Okay, I'm gonna look up the weird one when we get a chance. Come, think about it, and we'll come back to you. Go ahead.
I don't know if you know if they remade that commercial with Alex Earl. I don't know who it is. She's a TikToker.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
This what was it, the alien one with the I don't remember, but they did it. It was for a video that I heard. And everybody was like talking about it on
What were they talking about?
just how like it was like the same thing, it was being like sexualized, I guess.
Yes, yes, yes. Go ahead, the you, go ahead.
Just commercials like that were very common because one, I think it definitely had a target audience for.
A target audience for men,
Fast food was considered the working man's, thing. So
Okay.
definitely try to target definitely adult to young male audience because that's what most like men, working men, they need quick food. So
Okay.
get them to go there.
So it was targeting these young working men.
Yeah.
Hold on, because I'm gonna get to him. Go ahead.
I was kind of gonna say the same thing. I'm like, if you saw after the Super Bowl, it's like I think we know why they did that. There's a majority of people who are watching the Super Bowl are men, typically, straight men usually. So I think that obviously pertains to why exactly that was aired at that specific time. Unless it's just some coincidence, but
What were you gonna say real quick?
Yeah, it pertains back to what I was saying, like, it tells you, like, the attitudes of not only the advertisers, but, like, the foundational truths and struggles of the world at the time, like, that commercial came out at a time where men this is kind of what I feel like was being told about the time, like, all men were horny and wanted their pants and women, like, pretty much every damn minute of their lives.
I don't think that's changed.
I was gonna say there's.
And I'm not just saying it's men, because it's women too. Because listen, we're in a hypersexual culture, right? And research has showed us that. And that's why we're able to see these types of commercials and we're able to be desensitized by these types of commercials because research has shown how hypersexual our culture is. Like, you can't even turn on the music without them talking about sex. Go ahead.
Yeah, especially with children, specifically, like that show Glee.
Uh-huh.
All high school sophomores doing acapella or something, but they're doing these numbers where they're like, they're doing a number with teen pregnancy and she's giving birth, and there's, not saying birth is inherently sexual, but I'm saying, and the idea that it's like, oh, this, sophomore is giving birth, let's sing Queen, like, it's just like, it's just very, it's almost glossing over that, the seriousness and the tone of what it means to be pregnant as a teen, and then also just musical numbers, with, being almost shirtless and talking about sex and, having kids and this and that. And so my point is that society, I think, is hypersexualized because it starts at a very young age within our media. Nickelodeon, for example, many other examples, but those are just the ones that I think, and the ones that I will experience.
Right. What were you gonna say?
I feel like when you get exposed to these type of at a young age, like you usually get worse and worse and worse because like your mind will start getting used to it. Like at a very young age, and when you like get older, your mind is developing rapidly and stuff. So you would start to feel the need to go to look for something like more taboo. That's when you get into like looking at stuff like other stuff like tranny porn or something like CP, stuff like that. Like, it's getting more taboo, just getting worse and worse and investigators of, like, looking at stuff out there that they should not supposed to see that, you know?
Right. I'll get to you in a minute. And so when we're talking about commercials like this and we're talking about research, how are we going to know if we're not doing the research? How are we going to know that the younger that people see this, which is what you guys have both mentioned, is really harming their minds if we're not conducting research about this? Just like I was sharing with you guys about, these cell phones and dealing with, the students. I told you guys, I think it was this class, I had this one girl in the hospital every weekend who was coming in because her mom, she was beating her mom with the broom because she wanted her cell phone. Thank you. And so if we're warping these minds and the research is not showing us, but we can all see it, then how are we going to get to the highest level of morality of the post-conventional stage to have compassion to be able to combat this mental health disorder? So when we're talking about research, that's why I said you can research whatever you want to. And there is going to be multiple narratives because everybody has different perspectives. But unless you're coming with the numbers and the qualitative information of things, then how are we going to combat this? And like I shared with you guys, I do work with sex offenders. And when we're talking about working with these types of people, it is a mental health. But guess what? A lot of them, I asked them from the jump, what was your first sexual experience? And you know what a lot of them tell me? They were watching porn. They were watching porn at 10, 11 years old. And if we don't have this type of research to know that, then how is it that I'm going to be able to help those people to understand where their development stopped for them? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about research, we need it all, is basically the bottom line. There is no limit. There is no let me just pick this and let me just pick that, because we need it all. And just one little piece of information can bust it wide open for a theory or a solution that we may need to combat somebody's mental health problems. Am I making sense? So what are your thoughts about this conversation today? About the importance of research. Go ahead.
More or less, it kind of told me everything that, it kind of more or less reaffirmed to me what I've been thinking and thinking about for all this time, for all these past few years, ever since things such as the Capitol riot, the protests here in the U.S. over the COVID vaccine, the elections, everything, cultural, translations, lost in translations, cultural clashes, it's told me, all this has been reaffirming everything I've been thinking about, perception of reality, different values and ideals, how we see the world, how others see the world, what's right and wrong, there's so much of twisted, perceptions of right and wrong. Why do you think we have the current political climate, all these political factions and all this crap that's been happening in the world? Why do you think we have that? Well, I tell you, it's because of this diverging, all these different narratives over the same thing, and all the extremism that I've been talking about,
And you know what's crazy? Not just that, but the fact that information is being fed to you all the time. The moment you look at something, especially on your Instagram, now all of a sudden, because of research, you have a plethora of all the stuff that is popping up because you looked at it one time. I swear to goodness, I said one time, I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy some boots. I love boots. Next thing you know, you guys, my whole Instagram is filled with boots. So because of the research, and whatever we're putting our focus on, that's what's gonna come up. And it's happening so fast. So again, I just want you guys to go ahead and really think about, that's what Mondays are about, really think about how it is that you are thinking about research, especially as we're in week 3, so we're 3 weeks away from our literature review. So this is a good time to start thinking about what's really impacting you, what do you really want to know about, and how are you going to start looking for that research? Because there's going to be articles that are going to be on both sides. Am I making sense? So before I go, do I have any questions about our class? Any final comments about the class? Go ahead. Hold on.
If we're struggling like with writing an article, we're just email you for help.
Yeah, if you're struggling with finding an article, email me and we'll after class we'll hang out and find something.
Just so you know, folks, this is effectively Alice in Wonderland all over again. It's how far down the rabbit hole.
How far down the rabbit hole we're going? What was your last thought? Huh?
I wanted to say that I saw that weird scene from, I think it was iCarly, where there's somehow.
iCarly.
Oh,
At the moment where they were telling people what they're, like, something on the floor, they sent it to
That show was messed up. A lot of the directors.
Dan Schneider was a foot
Yeah.
fetish artist. Like on.
Dang, that's crazy.
They were very uncomfortable with them.
Right.
There's a lot of there's lawsuits, I think.
I believe it. All right, everyone, thank you for putting up with me. Stay after class if you have any other questions, if you need any help.
By the way,